Record. Okay, I think we're going. Hello, this is Mark Anderson, president of the Chattanooga Writers Guild, and we are having our typical Tuesday evening meeting, but we are not at the downtown city library. We are Zooming to you with an interview with Helga Kidder. Helga, am I right that you are from Germany?
That is correct. I came over here when I was 21.
Okay. Helga is the co-founder of the Chattanooga Writers Guild. So that was formed September 11th, 2001.
Yes.
And Helga lives here in Chattanooga with her husband, and her poems have been recently published in Poetry Quarterly, American Diversity Report, Slipstream, and others. She has 4 books of poetry: Wild Plums, Luckier Than the Stars, Blackberry Winter, and the current one, Loving the Dead, which we will talk about shortly. And
yes. If I may add, it was the 2020 winner of the Blue Light Press Book Award.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So we're going to talk about poetry. We're going to talk about what led up to this new book, and she's going to read some things from it. And but first, I want to get to know Helga a little bit better. I've known you, Helga, mostly from the open mics at Barnes & Noble. The last Friday of the month, Katie Ballantyne hosts a open mic there. And you can find out more about that on the website of the Chattanooga Writers Guild. So she's a regular there. And so I've been really impressed with from when I first started hearing her read, I was just very impressed. And so let me go back to the beginning of the Writers Guild. Who was the other people involved, and how did you guys get this group started?
It was Rebecca Cook and Jennifer Huff, and they were graduate students at UTC. And they were looking for a project that toward their master's degree. And I had already graduated from the Vermont College in writing and poetry. And so they needed someone to lead their poetry section, because they said, okay, Jennifer was going to do the business part. Rebecca was going to do the prose section, and I agreed to do the poetry section. That's how we started.
Did you imagine that it would be a long, enduring organization, or what did you think back then?
No, when we talked to others about it, they said, oh, it'll never work. It'll fizzle out in a year or two. And we just said, well, we're going to put our best foot forward and do the best we can with it. And on my part, I got writers in from out of town. And I think we were at first maybe 12 or 15 people. And I don't know how many you have now. I've lost count, I think. But that's how we started, and it just progressed from there.
Nice. So your writing at that time, my notes here say your chapbook was published in 2012, the Wild Plums.
Yes.
So there's a gap of over 10 years there. What were you writing during those early years?
I wasn't writing as much. I just did not have the community around me, even though we had the Chattanooga Writers Guild, and that was really worked out very well, but somehow I had lost interest for various reasons. I couldn't really pinpoint it right now, but when I started going to the open mic, I think that's when I wanted to re-immerse myself in writing, and that's what I did.
Okay. So there was something about the community of writers being challenged to get up and read, and I think there is something about a community where you help each other up, drag each
Right.
other along and say,
Right.
yeah, you can do this better, or, oh, I could do it better.
And I think, especially now at the open mic, we have many people who are really, really good writers, and we do encourage each other.
Okay. Did you always write poetry? What drew you to poetry?
When I first was introduced to poetry, I entered the class with the thought I wanted to write short stories. And I did, but I also was introduced to poetry at that time, and I thought, well, I really like that, especially that at that time, you know, you didn't have to do the rhyming and the meter that is in formal poetry. And I thought it just spoke to me. I thought I could do that quite well. And also I had good teachers, so that were encouraging. And we studied poetry that was inducive toward wanting to write. I think it wasn't the stilted kind of poetry. It was poetry from, let's say, Elizabeth Bishop. Also, let's see, I had to write down some names because, you know, I'm a little older here and my memory sometimes goes. But I also liked Shakespeare sonnets for some reason, even though that is formal poetry. But I loved how he would, in the envoy, you would learn why he was writing the poem or what he had to say in a way, a summary or a moral at the end of his sonnets. And I like that, and I still do that somewhat in my own poetry. I like that part. And also Emily Dickinson with her poetry, because she was writing slant.
Yeah.
And I love that part, to look at things from a different viewpoint, from a different angle. I like that. And also, I loved learning to write with metaphor and simile. And I still do that quite a bit in my poetry today.
Okay. So that's really good to know kind of the background. And let's talk about your current book. And it says it's about your sister, or your sister's death, the passing of your sister is what prompted this. It says, my book, Loving the Dead, was propelled by my sister's death 2 years ago. I couldn't stop writing. And in a sense, I wrote grief all over her death right out of myself.
Yes.
And so was your sister, was she here in America or Germany? Or?
No, all of my family is still in Germany. But my sister, was my older sister. And you know, older siblings, they have to take care of the younger ones. So
Yeah.
I always felt like she was taking care of me. And with that being lost, I myself was lost a little bit with her not being there in order to share things or, you know, even ask for advice. And so like I said, I couldn't stop writing. I had to write it out of myself. It just practically wrote itself, the book.
Right.
It came from deep within. Now the book itself, it is in 3 sections, and the first section is a little bit about the speaker and the situation, and then the middle part, the middle section, is all about the grief over losing the sister. And then the third part is about other things that we have lost, maybe other relatives and other people, or just the environment, things we're losing there. And so it's more inclusive.
Okay. Are you ready to share hopefully at least 3 selections out of it, one from each one of those passages? Where would you like to start? Would you like to share?
Yeah, I can read some of that. Let me see. Yeah, this is the first section, more about the speaker, and it's called 75th Birthday.
Okay.
Good wishes written in sand for me at the beach of Fuerteventura, where you straddle waves. You sent me Mario de Andrade's poem all the way from Spain to Savannah, where Spanish moss hangs like a veil over the beloved. Here, the cat meows at the door, and the puppy paws my knee, while morning sun lounges in the lawn, plays hide and seek in living oaks. I'd like to think I'm still in summer, yet fall reveals a tree's true self, the bare bones of being. De Andrade writes, life is a plate of candies. Have I eaten mine too fast? I listen to the whispers inside me, browsing the last handful before the veil frays into a shroud.
Wow. Could you read that last start there? I whisper at the...
Yes, I listen to the whispers inside me, browsing the last handful before the veil frays into a shroud.
Nice. So I think there's a gentleness to all the way through there, a smooth gentleness through it, reflecting on this time and this the place, this beach setting, right?
Yes.
Would you like to say anything about what inspired that and what actually happened more in that setting?
Well, my niece sent me a video where she had written on the beach in Spain, "Happy Birthday."
Oh.
And that triggered the poem. And
Okay.
at the time I was visiting my daughter in Savannah. So that's how the poem evolved. And yet I was still in grief, so that comes through a little bit, I think, especially in the ending, you know, thinking about what this Spanish writer, de Andrade, who is from Spain, obviously, what he wrote about life being a dish of candies. And then I wondered, well, did I eat mine too fast? You know, which is easy to do with candies.
Right. So what's the name of that one again? And is that near the beginning of the book?
It's just called, yes, it's in the first section. It's just called 75th birthday. It was
Okay.
my birthday, and I hate to admit it, but that's what it was.
Well, I can tell right off, this would be a fascinating book for reflecting on life. Let's do another one, another poem.
Shall I do one from the middle section, or do you want to stay in the first section?
Let's see. Well, let's try one from the middle section.
Okay. And this relates directly to my sister's death. And it's called, it's the title poem, it's called Loving the Dead. The cardinal said, she lives between the sun and the moon, within the light of stars. Each rose petal says, she is here, opening the flower to perfection. Her voice whispering the wind, unfolding your heart. The mirror reflects her shadow behind you. Don't grieve. You are not alone, not in the woods or fields, not in the city. She is turning down her bed inside you.
We had a computer glitch during
Yes.
one of your, and I'm gonna for two reasons. A good poem needs to be read twice.
So I should read it again. Okay.
I just love it. I mean, I go to readings and stuff, and if it's really good, I'm like, okay.
I want to hear that again. Yes, I agree. I agree. Loving the dead. The cardinal said, she lives between the sun and the moon, within the light of stars. Each rose petal says, she is here, opening the flower to perfection. Her voice whispering the wind, unfolding your heart. The mirror reflects her shadow behind you. Don't grieve. You are not alone. Not in the woods or fields, not in the city. She is turning down her bed inside you.
Okay, that is so nice. I love those. I was going to say I love the first four lines, but then they just give way to the next part. And
Yes.
so I think this is going to have to be a book I get.
Good.
And
I can recommend it.
Do you have another one from the middle section?
Yes, I do. I do. Let's see, where was that? I can't think of it. 57. Okay. And here again, this poem I wrote in Savannah as well. I was visiting my daughter again. It's called Dance of the Dead. Last night, the walls spoke to me in taps and scratches as the wind blew and branched bushes against the house. Here, history hoards spirits that whisper 200-year-old stories of wars, soldiers, and slaves. Here, night hosts the dance of the dead. You lightly stroked my hand until I woke, puzzled over meaning. Did you finally lose fear of height, soaring over the Atlantic through air? Did you want to comfort me? Or did your touch say, here I am, come?
Well, that's mysterious and haunting and comforting. Now, we were just saying that you were saying about writing from the emotion or the inspiration, and you couldn't stop writing. So, is it? I don't know. Sometimes they're very personal, so I probably push the along. I can imagine you having that experience and then just needing to write it. Is that accurate? Did you have an experience like a night experience like that, a dream of your sister or something?
Yes, well, that's exactly right, because when you lose someone, you say, you know they are not here anymore, but you ask yourself questions. Is she still around me, or where is she? Can I still maybe see her or feel her? And actually, this is a true occurrence. It woke me up that something touched my hand very lightly. And I just knew it must be her. It was really, in a way, spooky, I guess, but when you're so deep in grief, you're just, your mind just really works over, works overtime, I think.
Well, you paint a beautiful picture there, because there's the branches brushing against the house and the history of all of those. You're in a place where there's been centuries of people coming and going.
Yes.
And then that connection to your sister, it does paint a fascinating picture. And I think that's what for me, that's one of the things I love about poetry and literature in general. It gives me an image in my mind, and we can share. You have an experience. It's a shared common human experience that we are all connecting with life and death. And
yeah.
So thanks for sharing your experience in that intimate way.
Mm. Yes.
Do you find you write really best when with inspiration? I mean, there's a lot of like these disciplines of writing. They say, well, you just write. Do you write every day, inspired or not?
Yes.
Or do you just wait to get inspired?
Well, this year I have really, what they say, buckled down on poetry. So I get up every morning at 7 and I light my candle. Excuse me. Excuse me. Sorry about that.
You get up every morning at 7.
And I light my writing candle. I get a cup of coffee and I read poetry. I read first. And in order to get inspired, because if you're at home, you know that your surroundings don't change. So you need to have inspiration, I feel. And then I see maybe a word in what you read and I write it down. And then most mornings I do get inspired. For instance, yesterday I wrote a poem on bikers. Well, I'm not a biker or anything, but I wrote about it, and it actually turned out to be an interesting little sonnet. And so I think for me, I need to be inspired, yes. And definitely when we gather as poets and talk about writing and look at other people's writing, that inspires me as well.
Okay. So let's read something from the last section. And is this a cathartic section? Is the last section?
That is where other people come into play and other things that we have lost. And for instance, we've talked about, I think, losing some of the birds and butterflies and things. I always write about that, but one evening I saw a Luna moth, which I thought was interesting, and it is endangered as well. So I just wrote a little poem on it, which is also in this book. And it's called Luna Moth. I don't know are you familiar with what they look like? No. I had never seen one, so it was quite an experience for me. Luna Moth, you must have escaped the moon's craters, pale green wings ethereal as a fairy's, landing on the rosebush, reminding me of moments lost, treading the world's wheel. What brings you to my garden? Your 4 painted eyes on wings look at me, excuse me. Your 4 painted eyes on wings look at me as if seeking refuge. I sigh, want to open my vault of mercy to your endangered species. You will perfume the air for mating, then leave behind eggs for a new generation as the first leaves of fall, brown and brittle from drought, dwindle to the ground. And they are just really beautiful creatures, and I had not seen one since. Like I said, I had never seen one, and they are very rare, I believe.
Where were you when you saw that?
I was in my garden in the evening.
Here in Chattanooga?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have some rose bushes, and it was sitting on one of the rose bushes. Yeah, and they are fairly huge. So you can, you cannot miss them if you have them. Yeah. Maybe I would like to read one more from that particular section.
Please do.
What about the last one in the book? I particularly like. It's maybe not, we're steeped in the Bible here in this area. So it's interesting how this particular poem does not follow the Bible teaching in that sense about where we go once we leave here. But so I still love the poem. Well, it's very imaginative, I think.
Okay.
It's called Last Song. Getting from here to there seems a simple exhale of a frayed body, fluttering heart, spasming, winging air, clinging to branches, rasping. This is my story. This is my song. Then the suck of celestial wind reeling you in like a silvery fish in an ocean of clouds, stratosphere, flung past the margins of death, dropped into the wide arms of universe, caught in an ecstasy of flames, a whirling flamenco. You are created, wakened at your first cry.
Nice. Suck of celestial song.
Yeah. So.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Tempted to have you read it once more because
I can.
I think the thing about reading the poem, I can sit there and see the lines and see the words and those alliterations, the sounds that are I would guess that you must like those sounds in poetry the same way. I mean, that's
yes, I like a kind of internal rhyme sometimes. Yes, and sometimes it's repetition. And definitely, I pay a lot of attention to the line itself.
Okay. If you would you mind reading that
No,
once more?
I don't mind at all. I may want to add, actually, This Is My Story, This Is My Song is actually a church song. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
Oh, yeah.
So that is part of the poem.
Very famous song.
Yeah. Last song. Getting from here to there seems a simple exhale of a frayed body, fluttering heart, spasming, winging air, clinging to branches, rasping. This is my story. This is my song. Then the suck of celestial wind reeling you in like a silvery fish in an ocean of clouds, stratosphere, flung past the margins of death, dropped into the wide arms of universe, caught in an ecstasy of flames, a whirling flamenco. You are created, wakened at your first cry.
That's really nice.
I guess in a way it talks about being recreated. The moment you leave, you're being recreated.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting concept.
Well,
but I guess it might go with the Eastern religion. I don't know. Yeah.
The first line there about leaving as an exhale, and then there, I think next it goes on to frayed body, fluttering
heart, spasming, winging air,
so
clinging
there's
to
that,
branches.
the alliteration again, the frayed, fluttering,
yeah,
those kinds of
spasming, winging, yes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we do live in a Bible culture, and to varying degrees that influences us. I was just in one of my classes recently dealing with Shakespeare, and even though he wasn't writing a religious Christian, we were talking about Othello, actually, a play, that he spoke in those terms, though that was the culture he lived in, and all those symbols, biblical symbols, were dominated the culture. So it was the language of a lot of his poetry and works.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting, that even though it's in a slightly different language than we speak today, for instance, I love these sonnets, like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Or there is another one that I love, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. I love that especially, and then he lists all of her things that are not agreeable in a way, but then in the end he says, yeah, but I love her,
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Even though with all these things, I love her. Yeah. And I like that contradiction, especially in a poem. I do like that. And I also like Elizabeth Bishop, and she wrote a wonderful poem, it's a villanelle about the art of losing. It's called One Art. And I mean, it's beautifully written, that all the things you can lose, but you also can lose someone's love, so how she comes to that in the end, it's beautifully written. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
Well,
we have, I'm so surprised how our time went by.
Oh my goodness.
I'm going to plug your book here and make sure we all know where to get it. Loving the Dead, it's published by Blue Light Press, right?
Yes, but it's called First World Publishing, actually publishes it. Yeah.
Okay, and it's on Amazon, or will be?
It is on Amazon now. You can order it now, yes.
Okay. Well, that's what I need to go do then. Or are you going to be selling them locally? Will you have some at one of the?
I will probably be a couple of weeks before I get a stack, you know, so I can offer it to others.
Well, I need to get an autographed copy.
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to thank you very much, Helga. I'm honored. You know, some of the friendships I've made here through the Writers Guild are precious.
Yes.
And rub shoulders with some great writers. So I'm glad to be part of this organization, yes, and glad that you're continue to be involved. And so
thank you.
Looking forward to a lot more.
Association, yes. And you said you would come to my Thursday night writers group. That meets once a month.
When we can get vaccinations for this.
Oh my goodness, yes. Yeah. But
we're recording this May of 2020, in case someone listens to this in the future, and it's the height of our global health crisis, and yes, we're not meeting in person right now.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, a lot of people are writing poems about this time, and it inspires. You know, now a lot of people have the time to sit down and write, so go ahead and write about it.
All right.
Well, thank you very much for asking.
Thank you very much, Helga.
Thank you, Mark. Bye.
Bye-bye.